Hi guys, so what I've got here today on the bench is a centre console from a Classic Range Rover. Now I have done Classic Range Rover centre consoles before, but I've not done one of these. Different year, so obviously different centre console. I'll leave a link in the description to the other centre consoles and any other and any other Range Rover parts that I've done. I'll tell you where I'm at because I've actually started this. I've removed the lid. I did remove this part here. You can probably see that there's glue all around here. The two gaiters that were attached to this, the gaiter rings were damaged. They're supposed to just clip into here, but obviously the clips have been broken over time. All plastic does get brittle and breaks, and someone has glued them down. Now the glue was quite messy. It was visible underneath the gaiters. I didn't want to try and remove this glue because chances are I would have scratched the whole of this and it would have looked awful anyway. But what I've done is I've cut a new one. I 3D printed two new gaiter rings, and I'm going to cover this in tartan because this is going to match the rest of the car. So the rest of the car has tartan accents in it. I covered all four door cards in the same leather I'm going to cover this in, and the insert panels in the door cards had tartan on them. Now I'm going to put the same tartan on here. I'm going to reuse the same gaiters. The gaiters are in a decent condition. They're black perforated, although not quite perforated, they're embossed. So I'm going to reuse them as a contrast because sometimes it's nice to have a contrasting gaiter against all this leather. If the owner wants to change his mind later, there's enough leather to actually make a new set of gaiters. So my first job, I'm going to remove this part here. I will cover this first. I hope this is not glued in as well. It wouldn't surprise me if it is. It might not be, it just might be just the fact that it's been screwed down for so long. It's kind of just not quite bonded itself, but yeah, we're fine. So that is now very wet. I am just gonna get rid of a little bit of water off the surface. So that's the hardest side done. The rest should be, I wouldn't say relatively plain sailing, but it should be a lot easier now. These corners aren't quite as severe, they've got a bit more of a taper on them, so we should be much better. So that's going to need a little bit of time to dry. So I'll now put this to one side. It needs a few days now to dry. The leather is quite wet, so I'm just going to leave it. Not going to warm it up, just going to let it dry naturally. Once it's dried, I'll remove the staples that are in there. I'll do any trimming that I need to do, and I'll re-staple it on. These staples are just there just to hold it in place while it dries. So I need to get on with patterning this now. Now there is one little issue. The box that's in here, you can see it from underneath. It's bonded to this part here. Obviously I need to get the leather around the inside of this and tuck it in under there, but there's not a lot of space to tuck it in. I would prefer to remove it, but chances are it'll probably break trying to remove it. What I'll probably do is, when I've got the leather around here, I might make a little 3D printed ring that just fits in here, like a friction fit, that will hide the edge. There we go, we're out. So I'll place that back in. Once I've put the leather around, I'll place that back in. We should be fine. So I'm going to need a seam somewhere down here. What I do with the seam when I get to here, I don't know. Whether I continue it up along here and around and have the whole of this going down as one piece. Obviously it won't be one piece because I'm not going to put leather on this bit here. Don't need it. So yeah, it's going to be a little bit of a tricky little thing. I'll start to mark in the lines that I'm going to use as the seam. So this is symmetrical, I hope. What I will do, I will just pattern one side, and once I've patterned one side, I'll flip it over. I'll check it against the other side just to be doubly sure that it is symmetrical. In fact, I'm patterning the wrong side here, so I'm going to have to redraw the lines. The reason I'm saying I'm patterning the wrong side is because of the part that protrudes here. I'm not going to be able to pattern the side of that, but I can pattern the side of this, find centre, and then we should be fine. So redraw the lines in. That's my line redrawn in. I'm going to find centre of the back here, centre of the front, and I'll pattern obviously half to this bit here, because I'm going to have a seam running down the back, and half on the front. I'm not going to have a seam in the centre, but that just gives me half a pattern. I can flip it when I come to cut out that piece, and we should be alright. Going to be a little bit tricky. We've got flats going into curves, going into curves, going into flats, going into curves. So I'll put some backgrounds on. That's my centre line. I'll just double check that with a ruler. Yep. So I'm happy with where the centre is, happy with where the match marks are, the patterning lines. I will pattern the side first, that's going to be the easiest thing. It's not a hard thing to pattern. Then I'll pattern this top part here and then the little piece here, and we should have our pieces then. So it's 1 piece, 2 pieces, 3 pieces, 4 pieces, 5 pieces in total. So I'm going to use double-sided seaming tape just to hold the pattern in place. What I forgot to do is I need to draw a line down at the back where the seam is. This little point here is not going to be enough. So that should be enough to hold it in place. So the back here, because of the shape of it, it's got a curve in it. It's not a straight edge here. It's going to be a little bit of manipulation, so I'm going to have to make this seam at the back a little bit tighter to allow for this curve. So where this line is, when I bring this round, you'll see that I can't actually get it to be perfect everywhere. So here we've got a little bit too much packing plastic, so when I put this line in, I'm going to taper it. I'm going to take a little bit off the bottom seam and that'll tighten that side up. So the most important bit is that bit there at the top where the curve is. The rest I can deal with later. So from here to here, because it's pretty straight, it's flattish, straight lines, we're pretty good. When we come to things like this, because we're wrapping over, the pattern is going to be a little bit more tricky, especially in places like this. So I'm going to have to kind of guess where the leather is going to be to a certain extent. Now, when you pattern anything, and you're going to use material that is stretchy, leather is stretchy, you don't pattern that up to your line, you pattern a little bit lower, so that allows for the stretch, but you've got to work out where the stretch is going to be, how much it's going to stretch. It's going to stretch differently along long thin pieces than it is across short wide pieces. So now I just need to join the dots. That's the side pattern. I'm going to flip the pattern over and try it on the other side just to make sure it is symmetrical. I'm going to take a little bit out of the back seam. So I'm happy enough with that pattern. Now I need to pattern the face part. So I'm just going to do exactly the same thing, seaming tape, get some pattern plastic that's oversized, tape it all down, marking the lines, and we should be good. Now there's certain parts that I can't really pattern, but what I will do, I'll leave them over length. So the bit here, I'm not going to put a big hole in it. I'm going to put a little hole in it just so I can get my hand in to adjust it when I'm working. Or am I? No, I'm not. I'm going to leave it as one solid piece. It just makes it a bit more stable when I'm coming to glue it all into place. Yeah, it'll be one piece from here all the way down to here, and then there'll be a big hole in it here, and this will be effectively the same piece. So I could pattern it as one big flat piece. I think what I need to do is pattern it in half. I'm not going to pattern as one big piece. I'm going to pattern it as half, just because of this bit here, because I've got quite a deep bit here. The pattern's going to be a bit funky. It's going to be wider at the front, so this line will taper away to allow for this here. If I did it as it is, then there wouldn't be enough leather in this part here to stretch in. Leather has stretch, but it doesn't have this much stretch. So I'm going to put a proper line in all the way along. The most important thing with this now is just the line. Because we've got this big hole here where we're going to have no leather, this line's the important bit, and obviously having enough leather here. Everything else, because we've got gaps, we can manipulate the leather quite a lot, and we should be alright. So when it comes to this part here, I'm not going to stitch this to the rest of the leather. It will be a separate piece, just a sleeve effectively that goes over this that will be glued into place. So it will have a false seam effectively. It will be turned under, top stitched, and then glued into place. So it looks like it's actually been stitched in, because it's got the top stitch in here and the top stitching around here. But it won't be. So I've made the pattern now for the top piece. I'm going to have to cheat a little bit with this. You'll see when I get round to it what I'm going to do. I'm going to kind of put not a seam in, but I'm going to kind of hide a join. It's rather just butted up together, but I'm going to hide the join. So I'll show you how I'm going to hide that join when I get round to it. And what I might do, I might 3D print a ring that goes inside here to hide the end of this. These little things that you've got to do with things that aren't meant to be covered in leather. When you cover them in leather, you come across issues that you have to deal with in a certain way. I could put multiple seams in and make it look a bit messy, but I don't like doing that. I use as few seams as possible. You sometimes see vehicles that have been trimmed that weren't supposed to be trimmed in leather, and people just add loads and loads of seams to try and get around certain areas. I think it looks a bit clumsy, a bit messy, and I'd rather avoid seams if I can. Now, I've still not decided whether I'm going to top stitch this seam here. I probably will, but I probably won't top stitch either side of the seam. I'll probably just top stitch one side of the seam, just because of this curve here on the back end. Now that all the patterning has been done, I need to cut all the pieces out. Obviously, I've got the leather on the bench, good side facing down, bad side facing up. Obviously, I've stretched the leather so it's all tight on the bench. That just allows for the stretch that's in the leather when I cut the pieces out. So when I come to apply the pieces to the console, I'll kind of stretch them in place so there won't be any wrinkles. But if I cut this out without stretching the leather, the pieces will be too big. I'm not going to pin the pattern to the bench. I have to tape it down. So I need to add extra to this end, this bit here, and the bottom edge. That's so it can get tucked underneath the console, and the rest is just a seam allowance. So I've recut the piece that I put a hole in, stitched everything together. Now I did decide to top stitch each side of the seam. So all that's been done. So this cover is now ready to fit, but I'm not actually ready to fit it. There are a couple of cracks in the console itself. They're going to need repairing. So I'm just going to do a fiberglass repair on those. Once the repair's done, I need to give it all a quick sand down. Glue doesn't like sticking to smooth plastic. This is not the smoothest plastic in the world, but it's still smooth plastic. That's why I give it a sand down. Once I've sanded it down, I'll wipe it over with acetone, and then I'll be ready to actually glue this in place. I have made it a little bit tighter than I wanted to, but I'll get it on. It's the repair first. I'm not going to film doing a fiberglass repair. I've now done all the prep. I now need to apply the glue. Now the easiest way to apply glue to the cover is to turn the cover inside out, place it on here, and then apply the glue. If it was a flat piece of leather, then I'd just do it on the bench, but because this is not flat anymore because it's been sewn together as this shape, I can't lay it on the bench, so the easiest way is to put it on here. So I'm going to apply one layer of glue, and then I'll apply a second layer of glue to the leather. I'm doing that because leather is porous, so it'll absorb quite a lot of the first layer of glue, and then the second layer of glue will actually not be absorbed because the first layer of glue will actually be protecting it. You understand? So I'm now going to leave that for 20 minutes or so. I'll remove it, I'll put it out of the way somewhere it's not going to get full of dust, because the last thing I want to do is have dust on the inside of this. It will show through on the leather. And once I take it off, I will spray the plastic parts. Now that only needs one coat because obviously plastic isn't porous, it won't absorb the glue, so one coat on the plastic, and then leave that for at least 20 minutes, maybe even longer. I don't want the glue to be tacky. It still will be a little bit tacky, but I want most of the tack to go. Because I'm going to put this on, I'm going to steam the cover, and that will reactivate the glue, make it tacky again. But I want to be able to manipulate it first, get it into the correct position, because I want all these seams to be absolutely spot on straight, which is going to be a bit tricky, but it's obviously doable. There's nothing worse than having wobbly seams. Once the seams are in place, then I can start to do the rest. But yeah, the seams are the most important thing, and it needs stretching quite a lot this way. It'll be a lot of manipulation. So I'll leave this for a little while, come back to you when I take it off, and I'll spray the plastic. It's been over an hour now since I sprayed this. I'm going to now start to put the leather on. It's still a tiny bit tacky, so we're going to see how we go. going to start right in the centre at the back. I've got a line drawn in at the back where the centre is. So I'm going to line the rear seam up with that. I'm going to work each way. I have to stretch it quite a lot. Now this rear seam here is not really going to be seen ever because the hinge is going to cover that, and the lid as well to the box. I think we're alright with that side. We're looking pretty alright though. Readjust the corners. Right. So we're looking pretty straight and even along this part here. That was going to be the trickiest part. So what I need to do, I need to cut a hole in here, at the front, so I can now get the clamp in here. I want to clamp this as soon as possible and I hope it works. I'm going to flip it over just so I can see what I'm doing from the underside. I'm trying to manipulate this leather so I've got enough to get stretched into here. I think that might have worked. Almost. I'm going to leave that for a little while now. So I now think that these seams are running about as straight as I can get them. I'm now going to turn these ends down. Right, now it's time to get the steamer out. So I'm going to steam this back end in because I'm relatively happy with that. Yeah, I'm relatively happy with the back end. So I'll steam all this bit in here. I'll cut out this hole here so I can tuck the leather around, and then I'll start to move forward. So I'm just going to do the back first, then this edge here. I'm going to apply a lot of steam here. That'll just help that leather sit in there better, because this is the only bit I'm really worried about, believe it or not. So I think I am going to have to build a ring to go in here. Not a problem. So I'm going to have to remove this. And I'm happy enough with that. I am happy enough with how that fits. There's a little tiny bit on this corner here that I might want to just tweak a little bit, but everything else I think will be absolutely fine. So what I'm going to do now is just do all the trimming. So there's lots of little bits that need trimming off. I need to tuck the leather underneath, make the little piece that goes over the cigarette lighter, fit that. Obviously I still need to cover this piece here with the tartan fabric. This needs still to dry, so it's been 2 days. It's still very wet. It might take the rest of the week yet to dry properly. When it does, I'll take out all the staples, trim off the leather, refit it, put the little tray inside it, and then we'll be finished. I'm going to reuse the same gaiters just as a bit of a contrast. They're in good condition. There's no rips, no holes, no damage to them. So I'll use the original ones. If he wants them to replace at some other time, I can replace them, not a problem. And that job will be done. All the little tweaks now. But what I'm actually going to do first, before I finish off all the trimming bits and tuck it under, is I'm going to measure a ring for here, print it, and then I can fit it. So while I'm actually doing the rest of this, that will be printing. It shouldn't take long. It's just basically going to be a ring and fits in here. Right guys, that is now done. I say done, it's not actually done because this still needs to dry out. I've made the little insert ring for in here. That fits really nicely and does exactly what it's supposed to do. Now remember I said that I was going to reuse the black gaiters. I don't think they look right being black. I think they would need to be the same colour as the leather. I think they just stand out a little bit too much. But let me know what you think in the comments. I did decide to make a new set of certificators, and I think they look better than the black. I'm still not completely convinced, but just let me know what you think. Whether you prefer the black ones or you prefer the ones that match the rest of the console. I'm sure the owner can decide. He's got both, so he can decide which ones he wants. So if you enjoyed that video, give it the old thumbs up, and I hope you subscribed. Thanks for watching. Bye.